Welcome to the Till Books Do Us Part podcast. I'm Justin.
And I'm Jackie. Join us each week as we, a husband and wife duo, deep dive and discuss your favorite books.
Hey, Jack.
Hey, Justin.
Hey, guys. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, welcome to our second Iron Flame episode. We're going to be covering chapters 5 through 10 in this episode. So 6 chapters.
Yep. A few of them are super short, like 3 to 5 pages.
They are. There's some short ones in here.
And also, you added something new, right?
Yep. We're going to be adding a new segment for our Iron Flame coverage, which is going to be following what we believe Violet's second signet will be, or kind of looking for clues as to what her second signet might be.
Yeah, right. Because it's supposed to be hidden in this book or referenced a couple times or whatnot. So
it is. And obviously, all of our segments are going to have to change. Our Ben and Watch obviously had to end after Fourth Wing. Zayden's Intrinsic Watch will have to end after this one. Right. So, yep. And
it's always fun to look for something extra. So, spoiler alert, if you haven't finished Iron Flame yet, then you may not want to listen because we'll be covering, at times, topics or information from throughout the book, not just, what we've read in these chapters.
Yep.
Or covered in these chapters.
Obviously, literally just gave one when I talked about our Zayden Intrinsic Watch.
Damn, see? Look at that. Spoiler alert. Always late. Every time, late.
So, also content warning, we use adult language. We're talking about an adult book, so keep it in mind.
Yeah. All right. Chapter 5.
Ready for the summary?
I'm so ready.
Okay, so the post-graduation festivities are underway at this point, and the cadets they're basically getting wasted. Violet fields some awkward questions about what happened during war games, while the rest of the cadets are discussing what privileges they're looking forward to as second years. Zayden surprises Violet when he shows up ready to head out early to his new duty station, and then they run into Colonel Ados and are introduced to the new vice commandant, Major Venin. Varish.
Yes, nice.
They also get their leave orders explaining that they will get 2 days worth of leave. They will get 2 days worth of leave each every fortnight to travel for Tairn and Sigil to see each other, and rotating that leave means a visit once a week.
Ooh, couple tongue twisters in there. That was a tough one.
It was.
I was reading along with you.
I got through it.
I'm glad you read out loud, not me. It would be so difficult to listen to me read out loud.
In some ways, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty tough.
Not your strong suit.
Not my strong suit at all.
All right, so let's start talking about Chapter 5. So we get introduced to Varish really via the missive at the top of Chapter 5. And it says that basically he was killing prisoners.
Yeah.
And that's why he needed to be reassigned or to basically take a break from that. And so great idea. Let's send him to a school. So,
and it was sent to Gerald Milgren.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so it's not like Milgren can be like, I don't know. I told you, Venin. They're all, it's a whole network. I'm about to spoil this motherfucker right now. All of them. Atos, Varish, Pancheck probably. I don't know. All of them. The whole line. Yeah. Yeah, it was sent to Milgren. And then Milgren's like, I got the perfect spot.
School.
The fuck? Yeah.
Yeah, this guy is so, ruthless that he's murdering prisoners,
Right.
Basically.
Yeah, the letter basically just says, hey, he's fucking torturing everybody. And I don't mean torture. I mean he's torturing them to death.
Yeah.
Probably needs to, and they're just reassign him or something. Now he probably needs to be just put down.
Yeah.
He
needs
forced
to be
into retirement.
Relieved of his duties.
Yeah, I think so.
So when they're having these conversations with Violet, with the other cadets at the table, we keep getting these mentions of Shantara, and we get more of them throughout this book, but we don't ever actually get to see it because Violet never goes there.
Yeah, true. And I guess it's a bar or a pub, I guess.
It's a town.
Well, they're saying the draw, though, is hooking up with other
but
people
it's a
from
town.
Okay.
They're going to probably go to a bar there, but
okay, so I'm picturing
town.
It as
it's the town outside of Basgiath.
Okay,
is the way I understand it.
Either way, biggest draw seems to be
meeting other people.
Yeah, sex with other people. Basically, they're basically this is getting incestuous.
Yeah. Well, and they go apparently later in this book, but Violet never joins them.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. It would be cool. Again, there's so many more books coming too. Maybe you venture into some of these other places.
I'm sure that we can look forward to an Onyx Storm, seeing new places for sure. We're also further introduced to Nadine. And I feel like this is another example of when Rebecca kind of just like puts characters a little bit like more into the frame when she's about to kill him.
Yeah. So I'll be real with you. I had forgotten basically Nadine as a character.
Well, and it seems like that's the case. Like I remember like her name being referenced.
But I didn't remember anything else. And so, yeah, I'm not going to spoil our own episode, but obviously if you're listening, you already know, right? Like she just gets her neck snapped. So I don't know. It was just kind of, I was like, I don't remember who the fuck Nadine is. And then all of a sudden she's gone. You're right. Like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for the introduction.
And I feel like she kind of does that where, you know, she knew that Nadine was a character, but she's like, oh, I got to remind you that she's here and kind of make her more relevant.
And you're like, oh, maybe she'll be a character in this book.
Yeah.
No. And, like, yeah.
She just wants it to be a deal when she dies.
Right. Yeah. Well, it was very intense. We'll get to it.
She also, they were talking about Liam at the table and, you know, actually did like a cheers to him or whatever, toast. And they said that there's an unwritten rule that you don't speak of dead cadets, which is just like, how much more effed up can this whole situation get? Like, people are dying left and right, ruthlessly for little reason. And it's also like, once they die, we don't talk about them anymore. They're dead to us.
Right. And again, we're going to get into it a little bit more, but, you know, Varys is there because it's gotten too soft.
Yeah, right.
So, we'll get into it, but it has become too soft.
Apparently. I thought that was kind of wild, which I knew the whole thing of like, you have to burn their possessions and stuff like that, but I didn't know you just like weren't supposed to talk about them.
Yeah, I didn't remember that at all, but it was a good pickup because I didn't even catch it when I was doing the reread. You know, didn't really register much in my mind.
Well, did you catch Riddick's joke when Violet says that she'll be right back to go talk to Xaden, and Riddick says, I hope not, or you'll destroy all my fantasies about him?
Yeah, that's pretty good. Again, to me, it seemed like a normal dude, like, talk type of deal.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It just seemed like a normalization of how dudes can be.
It seems like a dude that's attracted to another dude.
Yeah. But, like, even dudes who are straight, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, that's how I took it.
Yeah, I thought that was funny. But she was leaving because Xaden is leaving earlier than he has to. And what it reminded me of is one of the times that you were deploying, you left earlier than you technically had to. Like, well, you'd like said your goodbyes earlier. And I remember it made me real sad.
Yeah. You know, you don't really know what the right thing to do is sometimes. So you just got to like come up with what you think is going to be the best way about it. And I chose one of my deployments to separate my goodbyes from you and the start of focusing in on what I was, getting ready to be doing.
Which obviously I understood for your sake. And
it was I tried to make
respected your choices on that.
Yeah, I tried to make a separation of it.
Yeah.
Then in retrospect, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, it all sucks.
Yeah, it does. I mean, obviously, there's no real difference other than, of course, like in my selfish mind, I'm like, I want that extra hour or whatever it would have been to be around you. But
yeah, and I get it. I get both sides of it too. You know, I don't know if I went back if I would do it any differently. I guess I probably would, but like I said, they both sucked. So you're just trying to make it less sucky. Really, is all it is.
So I felt like I related to her here. And if it were me, like, obviously the solution to the problem they have technically is for her to invite him to spend the night in her room.
Yeah.
She totally should have done it.
I agree.
The book would have been so different.
Like, yeah. I don't know what Violet's sex life has been like prior to, pretty much the last year. But if she's never had like intoxicated sex, she should try it. I mean,
she probably would have enjoyed it.
She probably wouldn't hate it.
Even if it was just like, hey, this is just for tonight. You're about to leave. We're going to go back to like being at odds tomorrow.
Yeah. Like, look, I'm not ready to reconcile whatever this might be, but I tell you what I do need. Yeah, I agree.
Oh, yeah. Well, then we, of course, start getting into the drama that is their back and forth here, which, I mean, not that this is the start of it, but this is where Xaden starts the whole, like, I'll tell you anything as long as you ask the right questions bullshit.
Yeah,
that
it is annoying.
Infuriates me. Like, if there's any, like, negative points to Xaden, which there are, like, this to me is one of the biggest ones for me, because it's well, I'll tell you, but you have to ask first.
Yeah, that is pretty lame. And I don't know, like, what information is he trying to protect so much where it's like, he's not willing to offer any of the wrong information that she doesn't need or want. So he's got to protect all of it. Like, I don't understand that part either.
I don't either. And, there's so much of it. And he does start later giving her more information about himself, like willingly without her having to ask. But like, I don't know. It just seems to me like it comes off as like a power play. Like, I'll tell you, but you have to ask first. Like, I don't know. I don't like it.
Okay. It's fair. Yeah. I mean, I picked up, like, he made a comment like, we'll get back to the bed. Very, very arrogant, right? When I was reading
confident.
Yeah, very confident. But then I was like, fuck, you can read her intentions. And she's basically being like, I want this dude so bad right now. So I'm like, well, what do you expect him to fucking say? Like,
true.
He knows that he gets it. Like, he knows what's going on.
It gives him a pretty good justification for being confident.
Yeah. So you're like, well, yeah, I guess so. Like, he's got no reason to fucking play around here. Like, he can read your intentions.
That's true.
Yep.
But I also, something that threw me off about this situation. So Ados, comes up. And this is when Violet finds out where he's being stationed.
Yeah.
Like, it's been a while since graduation. That was like earlier that morning. Why wasn't that immediately, like, her first question is, oh, what did your order say? Where are you getting stationed to?
Well, and at first I was like, well, maybe he's just finding out when he gets the orders. But I don't think that's it.
I think they got handed them at graduation. They said they were handwritten.
Like, packed and ready to go. Like, you would think if you don't even know where you're going yet.
No, he knows.
Right.
And he's known all day.
Yeah. That is a weird...
And they can speak mind to mind.
Right. Like, it's a big difference because he's getting ready to find out that he's going very far away.
Very far.
Like, there's a big difference in a place that's an hour flight and 24 hours
and it directly affects her because obviously she's going to have to find a way to travel for Sigale and Taryn to see each other.
And I don't know... maybe we've discussed this already, but like, if they were an hour away, would they still have enough? Would they be able to mentally?
I don't know. We don't know what their
communicate,
range is.
right? Whereas, like, we know they can't now, and like even Sigale and Taryn can't, and that's a big deal.
Yeah, so we don't know exactly what their range is,
right?
But yeah, I would think obviously Sigale and Taryn's range is much farther. So there is a good chance that they would be able to if it was a closer.
Right, if it was like an hour station, yeah.
And of course, we knew he wasn't going to end up at a close one. We know all of this is on purpose.
For sure, yep.
Well, the one thing I thought was kind of interesting about this too is that Violet seems super upset about the leave orders that they got with the whole, like, each of them get 2 days every other week, basically, which makes it so that they're coming to see each other every week.
Right.
So they get every
basically weekends, basically, yeah.
Which, how much better was she expecting that to be?
I guess the thought was they need to see each other every 3 days, according to...
That's just not realistic, though.
Right. And since they're so far away, she knows that most of that time, I think she mentions it actually, most of that time is spent flying.
Mm-hmm.
So I think she's just annoyed at that. But yeah, in the minds of the military who don't give a fuck.
Yeah, right.
What you think or want, then yeah, it makes total sense for them to be like, this is what we can give you.
Exactly.
Fucking weekends off. How's that?
Yeah, like I wouldn't, if she's in school Monday through Friday, obviously they're not traveling much of anywhere during that time. I don't know. To me, I was like, this was about as good as you could have gotten out of the situation, but she's like furious.
Yeah, I agree. Like, and I get it. I understand that from the point that it's written here, that's too far. But from the point of basically every employer, like, we don't fucking care. Yeah. So I get it. I get both sides.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, we also get this basically direct threat from Ados in this conversation.
Yep.
Where he says secrets die with the people who keep them, and was pretty much directly threatening Mira.
Yeah. Yep. So basically it was like, I hate for General Sorengale to lose either one of her daughters or whatnot. Right. So yeah, that's big. The secrets die with people who keep them thing. Like, that's a direct,
right.
Obviously that, you know what that means. And that comes up again very soon from an assassin. Right. So obviously that link. And the point that I took away is it doesn't say that he like leaned in and whispered it. It just said he said it. And Varys is right there.
Oh, I didn't catch that. Yeah, that's true.
So he would have heard it. It was just a normal conversation.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm Violet or, whatever, I'm thinking like,
Varish is in on this.
Yeah. Like the whole thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which again, that's because I'm reading a book and this is made up and pretend like this is real life and I can logically think my way through this. But
right.
I would like to think that I'd be like, I can't trust this motherfucker either.
Mm-hmm.
The one who tortures everybody to death. Probably, spoiler alert, he can't be trusted.
He probably shouldn't be.
So, yeah. Also, Eidos made a point to say that Varish reports directly to Pancheck.
Mm-hmm.
So I took that as like, that removes General Sorengale from the chain of command there, which makes it easier for, when interrogations or whatever, there to be things that are going on and the general not know about.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was a little bit of foreshadowing, like, hey, this is kind of the workaround how General Sorengale's not involved.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what the chain of command is there. I always thought that General Sorengale was above Pancheck.
So Pancheck is the commandant.
Right.
Which is the top. Head of...
But he's not... Melgren is the top.
Yeah, but Melgren's like in charge of like the military. And...
Pancheck is... But after they've made comments about how General Sorengale's in charge of the school.
She's in charge of the school. But the school probably falls in somebody's region. Or whatever, I don't know what you want to call this, but I'm just using generic, not real terms. That school falls in the western region, and there's a region general. All right, so she's the general of this school, but that school is in this region. There is a general that's in charge of everything in that region, including your school and all these other bases.
So where does the commandant fall into that?
I don't know. I mean, the commandant's obviously above
It
General
seems like
Sorengale.
he's related to the school. I thought she was in charge of the school, but I don't know. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, that was pretty much it. Short chapter.
Short chapter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Chapter 6. Oh!
Jinx.
Same time. Yeah, make it.
All right. Well, this chapter is mostly just Violet and Xaden's goodbyes. So he gives her some final advice about what to do and who to trust while he's gone. And they have some more back and forth about the state of their relationship while Violet tries to control her physical attraction to him. Xaden heads out to his new duty station, and Violet runs into Rhiannon, who has good news and bad news about the new leadership changes.
Yeah. Again, another very, very short chapter.
Mm-hmm.
So, start us off?
Yeah, well, apparently this is where Eidos threatens Mir's life if Violet tells her or anyone else. So I kind of had that. I had my notes mixed up there. But yeah, he said the secrets die with those who keep them at the end of chapter 5. Beginning of chapter 6, he tells her, basically, I'd hate for General Sorengale to lose either of her daughters or both of her daughters or something like that. And what triggered this for me was that Eidos is alive at the end of Iron Flame still.
Yeah, I don't really remember anything about, again, I have forgotten most of the details of this book. I remember how the story ends. I remember things along the way. I remember the big stuff that you would remember after reading a book.
Yeah, but you've only read it once and you were listening to it, so.
Right. But now I'm like, I don't fucking remember anything besides the big notes.
Yeah.
So I didn't even know Eidos was alive. When if you would have said he was killed, I would have been like, okay, checks out. I don't remember.
And I'm not 100% positive that he is, but I
think he is.
I think he is. Like, yeah. I don't remember anything about him dying. So, we still got to deal with this guy in the next book.
Yep. Yeah. So, well, I tell you what, he would not be alive because if I had Xaden or Violet's power, I couldn't be trusted.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he wouldn't be alive right now. Him, anybody I didn't trust, I would just be like, oh, all right, cool. Like, if I had shadows, I'd throw you right off the fucking parapet every time.
Well, and we know that there's not really any repercussions from killing your fellow cadets at all. Not really.
As long as they're not in your own squad.
Yeah, as long as they're not in your squad, there's no repercussions, or they're sleeping.
Yeah, well.
But I do think there would be repercussions for killing, like, leadership.
I would think so.
Yeah.
I would guess, probably.
Yeah.
So, well, and Xaden now has also become a lieutenant, right? And he's getting ready to leave. So it's my sweet segue into leadership. He's a lieutenant. Mm. And, she says that wing leaders have their choice of duty stations. And Xaden got a shitty one, I guess. It's very far away. So he said there was no other choice by the time they had wrote their orders, which seems really weird to me because if all third years that are graduating are taking orders as lieutenants, and wing leaders have their choice. Well, there's only 3 fucking wing leaders.
4.
4 wing leaders.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean there's nothing else? There's no other choice. Like, you should have one of the top 4 picks.
Yeah, well, I guess when he wasn't there, they let the 3 wing leaders choose theirs, and then they gave everybody else that was still there theirs.
That seems like some bullshit.
So then it was only what was left. Oh, I mean, I definitely think it was intentional that he ended up at Samara.
Sure.
I think that.
Well, and they met that. So he goes to Samara, which is with the southern wing, and it's the easternmost outpost. That's a day's flight away, which is, worst fucking possible scenario.
For sure. He also tells Violet, he says that you can only fully trust those who were at Resin.
Yeah.
And says not to risk trusting the other marked ones yet. So we had a conversation last episode or the one before about what members of the marked one or what marked ones are involved with the whole smuggling weapons in the rebellion. And we weren't sure if all of them were involved or just the ones that went to Resin. And this doesn't say that the other ones are not involved, just saying that she can't fully trust them because they might want her dead.
Right, yeah. So, yeah, right. That's what I got.
So they might still be working for the rebellion.
Right. Just, they know they can't kill you, but they can still hurt you or want to hurt you, whatever. He makes a comment
because of who she is.
Because of who she is, they still may hurt you.
Yeah.
Even though they know they can't kill you or
just
something like that.
Several of the rebellion leaders don't like her and want her dead, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Which again, like, fuck, man, I forget that is even going on still. There's so much other shit going on that it makes me forget that that's even a thing.
Yeah. Well, Violet makes an empty threat saying she was going to go hook up with somebody else, basically.
But again, he can read her intentions, so he's immediately like, no,
he can read
her
intentions, so he's like, you can, but you won't. He's a cocky son of a bitch. And with good reason. Sure.
Yeah.
With good reason.
I mean, he knows that she doesn't actually want to hook up with anybody else, and she's not going to hook up with anybody else, so he knows it's empty, so he can be cocky as fuck. And it's like, okay. Yeah. No problem.
I would be like, he would be very frustrating because he does seem to have a way of acting so unaffected by everything. That would be infuriating.
Yeah, I agree. It would be infuriating.
You can be like that sometimes.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I probably can be. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. I'm not perfect. I'm an imperfect person.
Well, then she runs into Rhiannon and learns that Rhiannon is a squad leader.
Yep.
And Dane is a wing leader.
Yep.
How do you feel about that?
Well, I get it. I mean, Rhiannon, it seems like a good choice, right? Like, it's referenced in the first book that she has aspirations to do that and that she works towards that. And, I think it's a point made about it. So it makes sense. And she's not marked, right? They still don't want to put marked ones in charge. So that's, makes total sense to me. Dane, as much as I don't like it, yeah, I mean, he's fucking Colonel Atos' son, and he's their secret weapon with this, like, outlawed.
Yeah, they definitely want to keep Dane happy.
Yeah. So, yeah, it makes sense to me. Who, again, if the marked ones were judged as equals, then there'd probably be lots of different, switch ups in leadership, but they're really not. So I feel like that if you're a marked one and you're in leadership like Xaden, it's because you are super strong, or like Xaden's choice that, they probably were trying to get him to buy in to keep everybody straight, the 100. And
we still don't exactly know who it is that chooses these leadership positions. So
nope. So, but that was it. I mean, again, super short chapter.
Super short chapter.
So chapter 7, I don't think 7's short. Maybe it is.
I don't remember, to be honest with you.
All right, then let's do it.
We'll find out.
All right. Just, hey, going in. All right, let's do it.
We'll figure it out.
My girl, that's what I'm talking about.
All right. Well, the cadets have been busy preparing for the incoming candidates for conscription day. And we get an intro into one of their new second-year courses that's called Rider Survival Course, or RSC for short. And apparently it's notably kept a secret from first year so that all of the experiences are fresh. It involves survival training and ominous interrogations. And they're basically given the directive not to break during those, or else, I guess. Violet heads to the archives to begin her secret research project, which requires her to lie to Jasenia for the first time. She secures her first 2 books about possibly how and where the wards were first created.
We wouldn't have to take a single note because that is the chapter.
Yeah.
You just read the chapter.
Basically.
Yep, very good. I know you just read the chapter. I have a note for one of us to read.
For one of us?
Yeah.
Which one do you think that's going to be, Justin?
I don't know. Do you have the ability to read anything right now? Because I don't.
I do.
Yeah, I don't have the ability to read anything.
Okay.
Yeah, it says the time request excerpt at the top from Colonel Daxon's Guide to Excelling in the Squad Quadrant.
Tome request. That was an auto.
Fucking autocorrect. And I didn't even I just said it like a jackass too. Time. Like, what the fuck is a time request?
You're like, I don't know. I guess she's going to read it and I'll find out.
Oh, yeah, like time request. Like, they get fucking PTO? What are we talking about?
Well, it says, quote, all tome requests at the archives of Basgiath must be recorded and filed. Any cadet who fails to do so will be reported for dereliction of duty, as well as punished for the loss of any text they failed to accurately track. And that's from Colonel Daxton's Guide to Excelling in the Scribe Quadrant.
Mm-hmm. Don't confuse that with a time request for vacation.
For vacation. Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah, again, that's what happens when I try to read. Dude, I'm not a reader. And you know what the funniest part to me is? I'm not going to edit that out. Like, I'm not going to cut that. Because I like doing editing, though I don't feel like I'm that great at it. This podcast is edited by a man with no formal training in editing.
I mean, you do way more than I can. I wouldn't even know where to begin.
Well, and, you know, my favorite podcast outside of our own, I'm not going to name drop it. Also, none of the listeners would have ever listened to it before, probably. It's a very just kind of like, for the most part, uncut as most as you can help it. You know, you kind of get a cough or clearing your throat in there or a laugh because it's not worth editing all that out. It's supposed to be normal.
Yeah, it is.
All right. Other than that,
what'd you have to say about the tome request?
See, what I didn't do.
It's writing any notes.
It's really writing a single note because I was thinking vacation days. You know, I started talking time requests. I started thinking vacations. You know what I mean? And I really just lost my whole train of thought about the tome request thing. I think it was really just like, hey, you got to really trust somebody to get them to hook you up, because if you don't, like, they're breaking rules.
Well, I think it was put there to kind of set the tone for Violet going in and asking Jasenia for these texts, and especially the more complicated ones she gets, and the fact that she has asked her for the Fables of the Baron in the past, and that comes up later.
That's word for word what my notes said, and you just read them. Like, what the fuck? How'd you do that?
Oh, it's not. Well, you know what's funny about your time request is my next note was about time off, which is just what a segue there.
See, that's a solid segue.
And what I wanted to say about it was it's crazy that they only get 1 week off between graduation and conscription day.
Yeah, that's a shit
And they're
schedule.
really not off, like, because they said they're there preparing for things. But this is essentially a year-round school.
In the first year, they were also there on weekends, so
and there were no like holiday breaks,
right?
Like,
and you couldn't communicate with family.
Oh, this is intense.
And again, Varys is coming in because we're soft here
we're
at Basgiath War College, and we need hardening up. Like, holy shit,
this is clearly soft.
Yeah. So there was a reference to Nolan, and one of the first ones I noticed after you read, his name starts coming up more and more, which obviously we know why later. But you get a reference to him being busy. And Nadine says, like, she's got what she's got wrong with her.
Wrist.
Wrist is broken or twisted or something. She's got a cast on it. Anyway, she can't get in to get it mended because he says he can't fit her in. And they talk about, basically being so busy since War Games. Mm-hmm. And again, there's no reason for them to think.
No.
Anything. They shouldn't put 2 and 2 together here. That's not what I'm saying. But
no, and neither did I when I read this for the first time.
Nobody should.
No. But we obviously do know why now. We know that he was dealing with Jack in some way, and we just don't know for sure. Was he healing Jack from War Games, or was this all the trying to get the Venom situation under control this whole time? But to me, it brought up 2 things.
Okay.
For one, it calls into question again the timeline for him becoming Venom, because obviously we're assuming he's Venom during this time.
Yes.
But if what Nolan was doing was helping him with the Venomness and controlling his urges or whatever it is that he's doing with him, Well, Nolan wasn't doing that before War Games.
Right. Okay. I got you.
So.
Okay. You want my thoughts? All
Yeah.
right. So here's my thoughts. Jack was a Venom.
Okay.
All right. We know that, right? Because, I mean, his eyes turned red when he was channeling power from the ground into Violet. There's a mention in here because I took the note. I just don't remember where. Somewhere in here, she thinks back on that memory. So anyway, I know, and I'm going to say no. I'm arrogant as fuck like that. I'm so fucking arrogant.
Shocking.
I know that he was at least a Venom then. He may have became a Venom then. Maybe he was before. I don't know. I think he was long before. I think he came to Bad Guy at the Venom. But anyway, irregardless, Venom don't just die like everybody else, right? Like, we know that. Like, these motherfuckers got to be stabbed with the correct shit. They can't just take a normal... You can't kill with dragon fire. You can't take him out that way. So Jack goes down in a pile of rubble, but that's not... I'm getting ready to say Dragonstone. Oh, Lord. It ain't Dragonstone. You know what Dragonstone is?
Yes.
Okay, me too. Anyway.
Yes. Yes.
So he wasn't stabbed with anything, that is going to actually kill him. So, long story short, I think that Nolan's been working on the antidote that he's giving Jack. Now, he does have to mend him because Jack just got, I'm sure fucked up.
But why was Nolan not this busy working on this prior to War Games?
I don't think
Or
they
did
knew.
they not know?
I don't think they knew. I think they recovered Jack's body and Jack was alive. And they were like, the fuck? And Jack was obviously Venom. They could see it. They knew it. And this has been restraining Jack.
Okay.
And working on serum or antidote. I don't remember what the term is because we're a ways away from that.
Yeah.
But working on the serum or their antidote or whatever that they end up using to like tame him or what they think is, solve the Venom problem, whatnot.
Well, that pretty nicely brings up my second question that this brought up.
I feel like I answered that really long. I feel like I talked for so long.
I think it was really good, though.
Was it?
Yeah, it was well
okay,
said.
Wow, thank you.
Well said.
Oh, okay, thanks.
So, the other thing was, again, and I've asked this before, why? Why are they trying to help Jack? Why would they have been trying to mend him for any reason? Like, no other cadet has died or gotten seriously injured, and they're like, oh, yeah, we've got to do everything we can and use our best mender to save this person.
Bet. Gotcha.
I have some theories, too.
Okay, sorry, go ahead. No, let me hear yours.
No, I want to hear yours.
If the U.S. government was to capture an alien right now, do you think... And this is under the belief that we don't have existing aliens or anything, okay? You think they would they would try to save this thing, right?
Yeah, to study it.
To do whatever.
That's good.
So they've captured the first ever Venom that they know of, obviously. And now they can try to make their serum to be like, oh, we healed them. Right?
Okay.
Oh.
So that's really good.
Damn it, I just thought about it. Go ahead. I'm not going to ruin your point. I haven't read your notes, but as I was talking...
I don't have a note about it.
Okay, I was about to say I didn't know, but as I was talking out loud, I felt contradictions rolling off my tongue, and I was like,
contradictions about yourself?
No, of what I was saying, of like, why would they be trying to save him, or why be trying to make a serum for Venom if half of these motherfuckers are Venom? Like, well,
that was my question. Is that because I thought that you would have gone a totally different direction with that? Is like, well, of course they're trying to save him because like they're all Venom and they all.
I don't even think
we obviously know that Varish has a big hand in what's happening with Jack.
Yeah.
We learned that in the next chapter.
But
so obviously he would have a vested interest.
I don't know. Like I said, I felt the contradictions because I was like, man, the people that are making this happen are fucking Venom. Like Varish is the one that like.
Yeah, we need to be keeping an eye on that too, because like I do believe that Varish most likely is Venom, but I want some proof of that. I want to come up with some evidence.
Yeah, that was a big topic. I didn't think the reference to Nolan being busy was going to just really get us going, but it sure did.
I mean, we literally pretty much did a whole theory section there.
I know. I remember I made the joke about your summary, like, well, you just read the whole chapter.
Apparently not.
No, there's much more. I actually have more notes too. So Professor Grady is introduced next.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about him?
I don't know. I have contradicting thoughts. Okay, so...
He seems like a nice guy.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
So... Professor Grady started introducing himself as captain, right? And then like kind of cut himself off and smiled or whatever. And it was like, Professor, right? So my first thought, I was like, I'll be honest with you, I was like, douche. All right. But I was like, if he has been introducing himself as captain.
If he's a professor for the first time.
Right, then it makes sense. He's like, my bad. I've been used to doing this. So I laid off of him. I was like, all right, I'm not going to go that far.
Mm-hmm.
But I do got some notes. So there's a reference to this being the first years that are coming in. Or no, I'm sorry, the second years, which is what Violet's year is now. Coming in are the smallest group to walk the hall since the first 6 riders. And there's 89 of them, which is a lot, more than 6.
It is. That does seem like big. And so like that, did the War College exist for the first 6?
I don't know.
Because who would have taught them?
So I also was like, since the first 6, like, and I'm thinking like since they walked the hall to start it. And the first class was a big one.
And the first class, like great job recruiting, like right off the get-go, because your first class is more than 89 people.
Yeah, no, again, like there's lots of people that could use the recruiting efforts of whoever came up with that because they did a really good job. So you mentioned it in your summary, but he is the professor for RSC, right? Rider Survival Course.
Mm-hmm.
So he lets them know they're going to be evaluated twice. And he also basically lets them know from the get-go they're going to be captured and abducted and tortured.
Mm-hmm.
And like none of the cadets seem like they've heard of this course, like you said, right? Because it's been kept under secrets. But like Xaden wouldn't say anything.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that no one, or that Brennan didn't put anything, which, there's a mention about it later in the book of Brennan. But yeah.
Yeah, and I just was like,
well kept secret.
That is such like, and again, I get that if it wasn't Violet, it'd be like, no, they need this. They have to like, this is something that they need to go through that will help them in the future. It helps us.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sacred. We have to make sure they go through this. But Xaden knows who the fuck is here and that he's not here with her.
It is surprising that he wouldn't have brought it up.
So, and knows that like, we know about survival skills. We're fighting fucking Venom. I got to ruin the surprise for you here. You know?
You're going to be interrogated.
Right.
This would have been for sure something I think that would have been talked about when they were discussing them returning to Bazgaya, that all of these second years would have to go through this. I don't think any of the other ones are second years.
I don't know, but like...
would have been the only one. But yeah.
Yeah.
Like they're going to go through interrogation.
Right. I don't know. It just seems odd to me that is not, Cat hasn't got out of the bag or whatnot.
True.
And then also says that everything is fine as long as you don't break during interrogation. And the way that I read that makes it seem like you die if you do.
Well, based on Grady's reaction, I think that's the truth. And I guess probably the reason it is they feel like they can't trust you at that point. Like if you're going to break during this interrogation here at school,
right,
then you're not going to be able to make it out on the real battlefield.
Yeah, so that's not like, you can watch any, documentaries on special forces and American militaries, right? Navy SEALs, there's plenty of them. That's the most famous one. There are schools, there are courses you go through where there is these type of, and they're not going to fucking kill you, like, again, but...
Well, the consequence for everything at Bazgaya is death.
But the actual interrogation skills and, like, that's a real thing, and that's being abducted or whatever, like, in these scenarios, that is part of real training, so...
True.
I don't know. I didn't have any, like, Grady is a Venom note, because I was very torn on his tactics, but I'm pretty sure Grady's a Venom.
Oh my God, of course you do.
Well, I don't know.
He's one that I haven't made my mind up on. He's not one that goes with them to Erasia later.
Right.
For my understanding, but he doesn't seem to be crappy in the meantime. I don't know. Hard to say.
Yeah, he's not a nice dude, and he
seems nice. He's nice to them.
Yeah,
in ways that he can.
Yeah, no, I don't trust him.
Yeah, well, he's a part of some pretty rough tactics. So
yeah, I don't trust the guy. So the next thing is, that I thought was odd, and again, I know this is basically a podcast where we're just like, what do you think about this, dude? What do you think about this? And again, mainly it's me being like, I don't know, but Terry, I don't know what else to do. There's just so many questions.
There are so many questions.
I know. It's basically like I'm gonna spew my questions for an hour or two. Just listen to my questions, but. Taryn says the Empyrean remains divided on whether or not they're going to get involved, right? I guess with like basically this war against the Venom is what he's getting to. And that this is why there's fewer dragons bonding. Right? And I was like, okay. And then he says that humans aren't the only ones keeping secrets, which we know that, but Taryn's telling Violet this. And I'm thinking, like, how do you not be like, what you mean? Like, what secrets?
Well, I think she knows he's not going to tell her.
I know, but like, we got fucking Wyvern and Venom. Like, we need to get our shit together.
What other secrets are there?
I want to know everything the dragons know. I want a book about dragons.
Oh, I want to know everything the dragons know too.
From Taryn's point of view, or Sigale's, either's fine.
Oh, I for sure would love a Taryn POV.
I would too. I think I enjoy his personality here because you don't get Sigale nearly as much, obviously. Yeah. So
no, a Taryn POV would be amazing.
That would be good. Yep.
I kind of want to know what their holdup is, though, as far as them making a decision, the Empyrean, that is. Is it because some of them are bonded to writers that are working with the Venom? And so that's why it's like they can't make a decision as a whole because, you know, like obviously Varys has a dragon, Ados has a dragon, Melgren has a dragon. You know, there's people that are bad guys.
Right.
That have dragons.
And that question has come to my mind so many times. I can't figure it out, right? Because I'm like, Taryn knows that some of these dragons, like Taryn
Jack
knows
had a dragon,
right? Like he's got to know.
Mm-hmm.
How does how does Bade not know what's coming for Bade?
Yeah,
the connection that is, so is there just no connection? Bade doesn't feel the actual connection he's supposed to Jack anymore. He's just trying to. That was my writer, so I'm helping him. You know, doesn't know what's coming.
Right, but all these other people's dragons are still actively working with them and for them. So that's what's confusing.
Yeah, Coda.
Yeah.
Dick.
Because you would think that the dragons would have a pretty vested interest in protecting the Veil. If that's what the Venom are after, and that's what their ultimate goal is, to come take out the Veil and drain it of power, then that should be a problem for the dragons.
And we're going to get into it into a minute. I can't speak. We're going to get into it in a minute, I'm sure, when it comes up. But there's a one-eyed orange fucking dagger tail coming that is a bag of dicks, right? And what? Is that not a common term?
Oh, it's just funny that you referred to a dragon as a bag of dicks.
Okay. Well, he is. He's a bag of dicks. And as soon as Taryn finds out he's there, he's like, fuck, I'm coming. So I got thoughts on that. We'll get to it. So I'm just throwing that out there now. But anyway.
Hi.
One last point, because again, it's a short chapter. Violet meets with Jacinia.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And they have some small talk. And then, like you said in your summary again, she tells her first real lie or whatever, which is significant for her. And she says that she's looking for books on why Basgiath was chosen over Caldir or whatever, however you say that. I think it's Caldir, for wards for a debate.
Yeah.
And then that's when she gets the 2 tomes, not times, that were written over 100 years ago. That's the oldest that she can find.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I just putting the point on there because this is the first time that you see this is the oldest books that they have.
But she could find,
That she could find is 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes no fucking sense whatsoever.
None.
Doesn't match up with anything.
No.
Okay. So that was my point of reading all that.
Well, I noticed in that conversation too, like we get this first mention of this Nausea person.
Yeah.
Who was asleep all the time.
Right. Sweet job.
I would think that with as rigid of the rules of being the scribe are, where you can't even like show emotion or any of that stuff, they're going to let this person just sleep on the job?
Again, scribe quadrant.
Does he have narcolepsy?
You know, there's no need to get into it really, but the different military branches all have like different little jokes and cracks they make at the other branches. And the scribe quadrant is whatever you make your biggest jokes at. Mm-hmm. Whatever the ones where you're like, you have air conditioning and you don't, this is not real. Yeah. That's the scribes.
Yeah.
That's my thought for them.
That's funny.
But that was it. That was all the notes that we could muster up. And again, it was important stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah, important stuff going on. It's just packed in like only a couple pages.
It is.
So
chapter 8's a little bit longer.
All right, hit me with it.
So it's time for Parapet.
Oh, sweet.
Things look a little different this time around for Violet because she and her squad get to be the ones taking names at the start of the Parapet, and knowing many of those candidates were not going to make it across. She meets a familiar face who she informs Rhiannon is King Tory's third son, who has come to enter the Writer's Quadrant without his father's permission. Soon after that, we get so excited to meet Liam's little sister Sloane until we learn that she blames Violet for Liam's death and she's going to be a pain in the ass, apparently. Of course, Violet helps her out anyway because she promised Liam, so both of those people make it across, and good guy Dane sees to it that they're both placed in Violet's squad. We then get to meet one of the biggest psychos of the series, as you've talked about before, Major Varish's dragon, Solus. So you called him a bag of dicks, I called him a psycho. So he makes the executive decision to not just torch the new cadets that run from formation, but also quite a few bonded riders in the process. Taryn shows up to let Solus know who's really in charge around here, which really cements Major Varish as new enemy number 1 for Violet.
I fucking hate Varys so much. He is just, you know how like Jack in the first book, he was like, fucking Jack. God, I hate Jack. Major Varys was like that for me too.
And almost worse because he is in a position of power and just abuses that so much.
And yeah, he's just a fucking worse. I mean, Atos is bad. Really, there's a lot of villains that open up in the second book. And I think that's only going to get worse into the third book.
Yeah, because we're going to learn who all of these villains
and I think if anything that we've learned about reading these series of books are like, Rebecca has alluded to in the past, if you've read any of her other books she's ever written, like she's not afraid to kill off your favorite character. So I'm fully expecting some venom to come out where I'm like, motherfucker, you're a venom? Oh, shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because this is a thought that we haven't gotten to.
Well, I mean, making Zayden a venom is like, whoa.
I mean, it was either him or Violet, and I think Violet is anyway, or going to be. So anyway, the one thing we never talk about is marked ones being venom. Ever.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Just a thought.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, sit with it. I know I dropped that out of the middle of nowhere. There's no notes. Just sit with it. So we get a book of Brendan reference about not watching Parapet if you can help it, right? Like watching just people die unnecessarily. Again, it always sticks with me the way it's written from the book of Brennan. And I instantly think the book of John, the book of Matt, and the book of Luke. Like that's what I think is that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, I have lots of different theories, but that's all I had.
I thought his point made sense because I do feel like it's going to be much different on this side of this situation. Like when she's crossing the parapet, she's really primarily just worried about herself. She's all nerves and adrenaline. It'll probably all goes by so fast. It's like a blur, but different when you're watching so many of them over and over and over again go across and just like continue to die. Like
and you can't help them.
No. And that's a lot of like unnecessary death.
Yeah. So there is a limit of death that you will become numb to it, which is not a healthy, good thing, right? But there is you look at doctors, nurses, some public safety stuff, like there are professions where if you see it so often, it becomes less sad, which is not a healthy thing, but that it's kind of one of those things where like, I don't know, you're still going to be sad. Like that's just shitty. You're going to watch innocent I say little kids are 20, but innocent kids in my mind, 20-year-olds try to cross this thing. And then you got we'll get to him, but Jack Barlow Jr. fucking tossing people off of it again.
Yeah, true.
So Nadine makes a comment, by the way, about like, it being a different day. When they went through and did their parapet, it was raining its ass off as a big storm. And now it's like nice and sunny or whatever. And Nadine says that Violet should have gotten her mom to call off the storm. And Violet says she wouldn't call off the storm, she wouldn't call the storm in and kill her like a coward, but she wouldn't call off the storm to help her either.
Right. And I know some people thought that her mom had called it there on purpose. And I think that this, in my opinion, was probably Rebecca's way of like shutting that theory down. And she says that she doesn't look at fan theories and stuff like that because she doesn't want it to affect, her stories and her plans. Yeah, I think that's not true at all.
You don't think so?
I don't think there's any way she doesn't come across things by accident. Because she's on social media.
Yeah.
And she reposts things. And, there's no way she's not coming across.
But she's not intentionally looking for it.
No, I don't think she's looking. Yeah.
I got you. It would affect you. I do see that.
I think this might have been one that she had seen where some people were like using this as a way to, villainize the mom or whatever, saying that she was so determined for Violet to die. She set a storm and this was her way of saying nope. But I also think it's they're trying to throw in little things to make her mom's death like more complicated. Like they're trying to, in this whole book, bring in some of these little redeeming qualities about her to try and make it so that at the end you have more of an emotional reaction to her death.
She doesn't die a hero or anything, but
Like in some ways she does.
she dies in a like redeeming, heroic type of way, maybe.
After knowing how many mistakes she had made along the way. And what...
It's complicated.
Yeah.
So it is kind of like a heroic redeeming
But so many
way.
of her actions had led to the situation they were in the first place.
Right. It's like, fuck, dude. Yeah, complicated, like you said. So, and then there's a note on dragons bonding, right? So this year, there's only 91 dragons willing to bond.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is where like some of the questioning comes up, right? And so there's more dragons not wanting to fight is the way that I take that, right? Like more dragons are kind of backing out, being like, nothing, we're out. Or is it more, I don't know, because I have this thought of like, if your rider is a venom and you're a dragon and you know it, is there like some sort of connection where you're like also start seeing it from their side or something? Like, I don't fucking know.
I took it as not that they're not willing to fight. I took it as if they can't guarantee that the person that they bond with is going to be on the side of fighting against the venom, then they would rather just not bond so that they're on their own and can fight in any capacity they want.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that better. I like that answer.
Yeah. Like they're like, all of these kids in this college are all the ones that have, been raised to think that none of that exists and all of that stuff. And
we don't want to have to deal with that.
We don't want to have to deal with that. And I guess in theory, like, the dragons are supposed to be able to see like who you are, but they're not in their minds yet prior to bonding with them. So they don't know if the person is going to be willing to fight against the venom or not.
Yeah. Good answer. Yeah. That was all I got. Yeah.
So then Violet mentions that Xaden left her books on weaving tierish knots along with a note. And the note was the big piece here to me. That says, even when I'm not with you, there's only you. And I'm telling you what, that is the kind of reassurance that women are looking for. You just got to throw that out there. He's not like making her in this moment assume or guess at how he feels. He's like, I'm going to leave you a note and I'm just going to let you know right there exactly how I feel.
Yep. And you know what? I have not always been great about that, have I, Jack?
Oh, well, it just made me laugh because I was just thinking like, as much as their communication issues are a mess in so many ways, there are several like very clear moments where Xaden communicates to her like, no, like this is how I feel and whatever. And I don't feel like you always get that in real life.
No, look, as a man, I can only speak for myself, but probably most men, we think things that we don't say a lot of times. At least I do. Or say enough, or are not smart enough or appreciative enough of our spouses to say it enough, maybe. You know what I mean?
Well, I just think, again, it's just funny because the common theme is always just that, like, women are the complicated ones. You never know what they're thinking. I feel like women communicate their feelings quite often, or at least most women that I know.
I'm sure some dudes do too.
Yeah. Men are not as great.
I'm not good about that. That's no spoiler. I'm better now. Again, we've been married, longer. We had to go through, learning how to be good communicators. I did.
Oh, for sure. Everybody does.
Yep.
So then Rhiannon stands up to Dane and says that she's not going to call him wing leader. And she even goes so far as to make a dig of like, Xaden didn't make us call him wing leader, so I'm not calling you wing leader. I feel like I loved that from Rhiannon. I feel like it's mostly for Violet's benefit because it seems like most people are cool with Dane as like a leader, like, I mean, they all like have their issues or like get annoyed by him. But overall, I feel like they accept his leadership position and him in that position. So I definitely feel like Rhiannon's just sticking up for her girl.
Right. Yeah. There's like a quote or whatever. I don't know the exact quote, but it basically says something along the lines of, if you have to ask for, respect or whatever, then you have to be respected. If you have to tell somebody you're in charge, you're not in charge type of deal. Or if you had to tell them you're a leader, then you're not a leader.
Right.
So I got the point. I also felt like it was, and this is as much as I am on Violet's side and I am against Dane, if she wants the questions to stop, she needs to maybe calm the fuck down when everybody's around saying that shit in front of everyone. Because that's going to raise question, suspicion. Like, again, I think it might come to that at some point. Where she's gonna be like, dude, you can't like talk to him in front of everybody that way.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm on her side, but she needs to probably understand that you're gonna
Well, it's not
raise
her,
suspicion.
it's Rhiannon. That's
Or Rhiannon,
mostly
whatever.
saying it here. But yeah, I see what you're saying, that like, you know, regardless of her personal opinion, because that's all anybody else thinks, is that it's their personal drama.
Right.
They
So
don't
it's
know
not a
that
good
it's
look.
bigger than that.
Yeah, if you don't want the questions, you don't want that, you back it off, because you can't talk to anybody that's in charge or whatever, a higher rank, billet, whatever you want to say the terms are, you know, title, that way in front of everybody. It's never going to work out.
Right.
No matter what you have to say or what you think about them. It's just not something you can do.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, Rhiannon asked Dane what he knows about the new Vice Commandant Varish.
Mm-hmm.
And he says nothing except that he was a hard ass who thinks that the quadrant went soft after him, which my thought is, if this is soft, and that he's Dane's dad's friend, him, yeah, and Atos are buddies. But yeah, if this is soft, what the fuck did it used to be like?
Yeah.
Like, what was it hard? And again, I've made this point before on this podcast. When I went in the military, everybody before me is like, you don't know, it's so much softer when we went through, right? And then the people after me, I found myself being like, they got it so much easier when I went through. You know what I mean? It's just a natural progression of life that people who have done it before you think that your generation is softer.
Right.
And I can tell you now, because I did it 20 years ago, the generation now I view as softer, which is incorrect. They're not softer. They're just as, you know, tough and whatever as everybody. But this is just like a realistic way that I think military people are. They just always think it was harder for them.
Yeah, but I mean, that's kind of what our point was, though, is that how much harder could it have possibly been?
Right. Like, oh, well, when I was in, they just used to cut your head off.
Yeah, like everybody died.
They pick 3 people
time.
a day and just cut your head off.
Yeah, like,
for morning formation, 3 random heads off.
They just pulled them out of a
and
bowl.
then they had a dragon, like 6 people on fire once a month, just to remind you. You know, like I think we're good. Everybody's fucking dying all the time.
All the time.
Yeah, it's
the consequences, death for literally everything.
Right.
Like, how much more difficult could it really be?
Get the wrong signet by chance, neck broken.
You're dead.
All right. Somebody in a different squad don't like you, they can murder you in front of a professor who's going to be like, you better stop it.
Maybe that's one of the things, is the whole, like, you can't kill people within your squad. He's like, what? No, you should totally be able to kill people while they're sleeping and in your squad. You should be able to kill whoever you want at any time.
Yep. So, and I agree. So we move from like, oh yeah, you know, this place is too soft, to basically going into Parapet, right? And Violet mentions that she's not really trying to get to know anybody, see anybody, any of that stuff, except she takes note of aggressive candidates. And there's one that Rhiannon calls Jack Barlow Jr.
And he's the one who kills Nadine.
Right. Who follows Jack Barlow's, you know, MO or whatever, where he gets halfway through the parapet and just tosses some poor kid off to the side to his death. But yeah, Violet, this is where I was talking about before, that there's kind of a recall. Violet recalls Jack pushing energy through her, right? Second time foreshadowing that Jack's a venom, by the way.
I hear you.
What do you think about this? I'm not saying I want a real number. Yeah, how many venom did they just watch cross parapet? Jack Barlow Jr. that just crossed is a venom. I'll get to that in a minute when we get to him. But
it does seem like he is a venom once he interacts with Violet later. Is he a venom at this point? This is where it's complicated. I think that it makes the most sense for these people to have been venom before coming in, because of what we are taught is that you're not able to channel under the wards. So then that would imply that they would have had to come venom elsewhere. But Jack kind of also makes it seem like at the end of Iron Flame that that's also not true. So I don't know.
I think that a lot we don't know. I don't know either, right? I was just, I was thinking, are only the overly aggressive ones the venom? Is it those the ones that, like, they just can't help it, they're so aggressive? Or are some of them
like smarter and more controlled?
Like Jack Barlow and Jack Barlow Jr. over here did never once held restraint or tried to show that they're not who they are.
Right.
So also during this part, and again, a lot's going on during Parapet this year. King Tori's third son, Eric, crosses using a fake name, but obviously Violet, knows him from their parents being together or whatever. So
I didn't catch this in any of my other reads, but I noticed it this time. She points out that Eric or Ark, I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce it, tells Dane to do him a favor and ignore him. But she makes a point of saying he does not say that to me. So I didn't know exactly what that was supposed to imply, because we know later, we find out that Eric knows what's going on. Like, he knows about the venom.
Right.
But I'm wondering if he has even more knowledge of potentially
like who Dane is.
Dane's or Dane's dad's involvement more specifically. And so he's like, yeah, I don't even want to be around Dane.
Okay.
Because I know what Ados is up to, and I'm not a part of that.
That's a deep pull. Okay. That's a deep pull. I like it. I can get down to that. I just thought it was like, do me a favor and ignore me. Like, don't even look at me. I don't want people to notice I'm here and you're talking to me, you're looking at me, you're making it too obvious.
That's how I read it the first time too, but then it was just that random side comment where he says, yeah, he tells Dane, do me a favor, ignore me, but he doesn't say that to me.
I love a deep pull. Yeah. I want it. So yeah, I'm in with you. And then who's right behind Eric in line? Sloane. All right. And she fucking hates Violet.
She does.
She is not a nice 20-year-old. No, she is not. And she's a little too much. And I know this is we just went about how much should I learn being married? And I'm about to break rule number fucking 1. Okay. But this girl's dramatic. This Sloane is too much drama. And I recognize she blames Violet for the death of her brother.
Yeah.
But she also says she knows the story. And at 20, you're grown up enough to be able to separate that.
Well, see, here's my question is, who did she get the story from? How does Sloane know what happened? And that's where I think that piece comes in, is because depending on who told the story, I think is going to change a lot. Because my first thought was maybe she heard it from Imogen, because we know later we hear that Imogen has sent her a letter. Yeah. So we're like, oh, well, maybe she heard about it from Imogen. But I don't think that Imogen would have told the story in the light of painting Violet out to be the bad guy. But if she had just made a quick comment of, Liam went after to try to save Violet and that's how he died, then obviously she doesn't have the whole story. She does, you know what I mean?
Well, she doesn't have the whole story, but aside from Violet held a sword at his throat until there's the way that she treats Violet off the get-go, there is no justifiable story she's been told.
Yeah, but we also kind of got the impression that some of the other marked ones that were there, don't necessarily love the concept of Violet either.
Right. No, I know.
So they could have told the story from a very different point of view.
You're right.
So I don't know.
Well, either way, they both end up in Violet's squad, which,
Thanks,
one
Dane.
took Dane doing a little, magic up there, pulled a Zayden, went up there and got some stuff switched around.
And thinks that it's going to make Violet
right.
Thank him or something.
Yeah, and she's like, I mean, whatever, dude. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, we learned too, and I'm surprised you didn't make a comment about this because you're always the numbers guy, is that they said 71 candidates fell from the parapet.
How many fell last year? Because they said it's 4 more than last year.
I didn't catch that part, but that is a lot of people to just die, hoping that you might get a chance to start college.
Yeah, it's a really, and for aside from the marked ones, it only takes volunteers. If you said, and I don't think of myself as a big wuss or anything, but if you said, hey, Justin, you want to volunteer to do this thing that day 1 kills half everybody that does it? I'd probably be like, nah, no, not really. Probably not. I think I'll pass. I don't think so.
Yeah, I would have a tough time with that.
All right. So we get introduced to Solus, I guess is how you say it, Varys' orange dagger tail, who I mentioned before is a bag of dicks, which is true. So Violet notices the dragon, and Taryn immediately is concerned, is like, don't take your eyes off of him. Where did you think the fucking dragon was?
Yeah, and I guess this might have been Taryn being worried that he was going to retaliate against Violet for their beef, I guess. Because he's
yeah, maybe. I guess because he took his eye or whatever. Maybe. I don't know. But he's going to be with the rider and you know exactly where he's going to be. So I thought that was odd. But Solus does exactly what I guess Taryn was worried about, aside from killing Violet. Is that
which he could have.
Which he could have. You obviously have a handful of runners, which they mentioned, or Violet mentions, that Solus is letting them run further than last year. They just killed them sooner or whatever. But she kills the runners, half of another squad, a first year out of Violet squad, and Ciaran. which is like, okay. And Varys was like, told you y'all were being soft.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if that really was the whole point. You know, she was kind of wondering and makes a point of mentioning to Imogen, Ciaran dying, like, might have been the whole point of this. And obviously, Violet was clearly in the path of this. Imogen was clearly in the path of this. Like,
yeah, I'm glossing over the fact that Violet's leathers were burnt so badly that she pulled them off from the front.
Like she said that if she hadn't spoken, then they all would have been
and
dead.
She also has Mira's dragon scales and things that can help. So yeah, this very easily could have taken her out as long with others. So yeah,
and it seems like that might have been the point.
Yeah,
I had some notes about the concept of these runners, and I felt this way even in Fourth Wing the very first time. A couple things. If you're that scared of dragons that the sight of them makes you run for your life, why in the world are you crossing the parapet to begin with?
Yeah, you probably volunteered for the wrong quadrant, my friend. You probably made a mistake.
Never seen them in person before, but they just did not expect them to be quite so scary, I guess.
There's 4 quadrants here at this college, which is separate from also the military, in my mind, the army, right?
Yeah.
You didn't have to choose this. And it seems like this is just, it happens every year.
It does. Like people just see dragons and are like, oh shit, dragons are scary. Let's go.
Right. Not making fun of death. But again, dumb people exist everywhere. Right? Like those are dumb people.
Well, the other point that I had about that is no one warned them that if you run, the dragons are going to scorch you. Like, I guess this is one of those survival of the fittest type situations where they're just, like, if they're dumb enough to run, then nobody's going to give them a heads up about that.
I guess so, yeah. I mean, you're running away from, like, you shouldn't be bonding. You shouldn't be a rider. It makes sense. I mean, hopefully somebody was like, hey, if you do anything but graduate, you die. Like, there's, like, for real. It's,
well, I think that's what it says on the front of the book, graduate or die.
It might, maybe, yeah.
So Panchek's response to this is to yell at them to get back in formation, saying riders don't balk at fire. And I thought that Violet's response to this was so perfect. She was like, the fuck we don't.
Right, yeah.
Like we just supposed to stand there and get scorched?
Yeah, come on, dude. Why don't you come on down here and stand and take that shit? Like, yeah, no, I
what
agree.
was the alternative? To allow him to kill them? Like,
yeah, you're right. I should have just taken that fire right to the face. So, yeah, and Varys says it's not just first years who earn their leathers. And so my guess is this is his first, like, I'm changing the softness of the quadrant. This is the first time you really see his thought. Like,
I'm going to kill you.
Right.
Indiscriminately.
Took out, all in all, if you include all of them up, he just took out roughly a squad of cadets and was like, fuck it, you'll be fine, soft ass kids.
Yeah, just randomly killing people off. And I think about this sometimes, like every once in a while, clearly this is fantasy, but just like, you just can't help but think if any of these things were to ever happen in the real world, like your kid goes off to college the first day and like just gets scorched to death for absolutely no reason whatsoever. And they're like, yeah, that'll teach you. Like the amount of lawsuits.
That wouldn't, that wouldn't happen. Not in America, at least. Like, no, that wouldn't stand.
So then I caught this, and I don't know if it's important or not, is that Violet makes a comment about Kath's breath. And she says that like Dane needs to check her teeth because her breath is terrible. And for whatever reason, this stuck with me. And I felt like, and I tried to do some research and could not find anything. I thought I had read something another time about dragons and their breath and thought that it was somehow related to, wyvern venom something.
Yeah.
Do you remember anything about that?
No, not a single thing.
Well, I'm going to keep an eye on it because I thought that it was a weird comment. I thought that it was kind of just, odd, and it just could have just been descriptive of, this dragon has bad breath. But
I took it as dragons eat lots of animals every day, and maybe there's a rotting one in his stink ass teeth, and nothing more.
Well, and that's how she presented it.
But again, I love your deep thoughtness. Yeah. I'm so in on it. I love it. Continue.
So Taryn shows up after all of this goes down, and we really get this first glimpse into this beef between Taryn and Solas, and just like another reminder that like Taryn is the ultimate boss around here. Like the other wing leaders, dragons, move away and are like, nope, I'm not fucking with Taryn.
Well, Violet says that he's twice as big as any other dragon there, but to Solas' credit, multiple times she references like either when Terran's roaring or getting in his face, whatever's going on, that these other dragons back up multiple times. And multiple times she mentions that Solus stands his ground.
Sure.
I think. I don't know. Stands the dragon's ground.
Yeah. I think his, yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. It is, you get a glimpse into their beef, right? Because obviously we find out that Terran took one of Solus's eyes. But I don't remember, and maybe you do. Do we find out how that happened or why or the story behind that?
I don't think so.
Okay. If we do, I'm sure we'll take a note of it when it comes up.
Yeah.
Because I don't remember either.
I don't remember.
So, but yeah, that's pretty much it. Terran, like you say, he shows up. He basically is like, I'm going to fucking kill you. Because I think it's what he says in Dragon. He's like, I basically said I was going to kill Varys. I was going to eat
He's going to eat Varys and like eat him alive and let him rot in his belly or something like that. It was pretty descriptive.
Yeah, I love it. That's it, though.
So let's move on to chapter 9.
All right.
Let's do our summary.
Okay.
So Violet wakes up early to go for a run, and Imogen decides to join her. And she has to do some evasive maneuvering when she runs into Rhiannon and Bodhi, because Rhiannon is very suspicious of her new friendship with Imogen. Next, the squad finds themselves in the first battle brief class of the year, where they learn about 2 new Griffin attacks that Violet takes a new interest in. She begs Bodhi to let her help in the cause, but of course he quickly shuts her down. Then it's time for assessment day on the sparring mats, and soon after, Sloane is denied her request to fight Violet. The big guy from the parapet shows back up, looking for Violet. Nadine makes the fatal mistake of pretending to be Violet, and it ends up with her neck being snapped.
It's like I feel like I have so many thoughts about that, but I don't because it was one sentence.
Yeah.
It was just so abruptly like, what the fuck? You know what I mean?
It was very abrupt.
Right. So, anyway. That's crazy. I don't know. That's still one of the most like shocking parts of this book. And all the shit that happens when that dude just walks up and she's like, yeah, I'm Violet. And he just snaps her neck. And I'm just like, what the fuck just happened? Like, shit. So, first note, of course, there's a first 6 mention in the United Navarre, excerpt at the top.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to read that?
Would you like me to?
Would you like to?
Sure.
Okay, if you want to.
So it says, and in the mountains of the Steel Ridge Range, the green dragons of the, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that line, known for their keen intellect and rational countenance, offered their ancestral hatching grounds for the good of dragonkind, and the wards of Navarre were woven by the first 6 at what is now Basgiath War College. And again, that's from United Navarre, A Study in Survival by Grotto Bernal, curator of the Scribe Quadrant.
Thanks, Grotto.
Yep. So I thought that was interesting because now we're learning a little bit more at paying attention to this, that it seems like each like breed, color, whatever of dragon had their own hatching grounds, because they had said before that the black dragons were at Erasia at those hatching grounds. And it says here the green dragons were here, which to me would imply that there's 6 hatching grounds out there, right?
That I would take it that way.
If each of them had their own.
I wonder if this whole time, there's a reference to Brennan, I think it was last episode, being like he didn't know how Wyvern, came about. He thought they hatched. And she's like, no, because the book said that they didn't. What if there was a Wyvern hatching ground? What if the book is wrong? What if her dad wrote it and he was just wrong about that? And somewhere in the Barrens, there's a Wyvern hatching ground. And
Possibly.
There's more Wyvern hatching now, just like Andarna just hatched.
Possibly.
Right? I know it's out there, but...
Yeah, it doesn't explain the connection to the Wyvern and the Venom that she thinks created them, because obviously, like, when she kills the Venom, the Wyvern that...
Are created
by them die, so...
Okay, you're right. Yep, bad point. Okay, move on.
We get the first mention of Violet's nightmares, and this is something that I want to pay attention to on this reread, is really digging into these nightmares, because there's a lot of thoughts about them of, where they're coming from, if they're her nightmares or if they're Xaden's.
Right.
And she's just, seeing them through that connection and exactly what those look like. So I'm going to be paying more attention to them.
Or was the poison that she was stabbed with somehow opened up a connection where they're like the venom?
Which would make sense, but Xaden has them too.
Because of their mental connection.
So you think he's seeing hers?
He's seeing hers through the poison tip dagger. Maybe. I don't know. Again, so many questions. I can sit here and just ask you 1,000 of them, but I don't know. Again, that's a good one. I'm glad you're paying attention for that.
Yeah.
I like that. So there's a conversation between Imogen and Violet, which in the book is it's kind of the bottom of page 73 going into 74. And Imogen asks her why she's been running every morning, and Violet says, like, the way I read it was just like, how would you know I've been running? Like, very surprised question, like, how could you possibly know that? And Imogen says it's because she can't sleep either, and her room's above Violet's room, which is plausible, it checks out. But my first thought was, has she wiped a memory?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
That was a good catch. Though
Okay.
when I saw your note prior to reading this myself, which made me notice, she also, when her and Bodhi kind of share a look, meaning Imogen and Bodhi, Imogen says, "I've got this" to Bodhi.
Yep.
Which, like, what does she mean by that?
Right.
And that somewhat implies a prior conversation between her and Bodhi.
Right. Yeah, that's all. I didn't write a note, but I remember reading it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that could give credit to your thought of, there's been something that she's had to erase before, and
yeah,
her and Bodhi have talked about it.
Yeah. So just a question. I didn't know, maybe just kind of open that thought up, a possible time where we see that Imogen has erased the memory, not that that's one. I don't know. Anyway, Bodhi randomly gets reassigned to Flame Section, which I was like, how'd that get pulled off?
I think it was intentional, and intentional in two ways. I think that, like, fictionally, it was intentional because, like, Xaden would have wanted him to be in Violet's direct chain of command so that he can help her, which he does eventually do. I also think that it's intentional from Rebecca Yarros' point of view of writing, where that's just convenient for her to kind of get around certain things and make Bodhi in her direct chain of command so that something can be more realistic.
Well, that was my thought. It definitely makes it easier for her to have him involved in the story if they're basically always together in the squad.
Yeah. Or section.
Yeah.
So then Rhiannon's got all these suspicions about Violet's friendship with Imogen. And I feel like those are super unwarranted because there are so many reasons why Violet would have started up a friendship with Imogen. First and foremost, that she is in a situationship with Xaden, who is good friends with Imogen. So, like, that right there would have, like, kind of started to squash some of the beef between Imogen and Violet because obviously, like, Xaden's going to say, you got to be friends with her, or you got to be at least cordial with her.
Right.
But then also, even though they don't know the details of what they experienced at Russin, Athbean, wherever they think they were, that experience still, the story that they're telling people would be plenty enough reason for her to have had, like, some sort of bonding with Imogen through all of that. Like, they just went through this huge thing together.
Right.
And made it out, fought side by side to try and save each other. They say in the story, like, Storngale was one of the ones who was the reason why they made it out alive. Like, obviously, Imogen and her relationship are going to have changed.
Yep. So I thought that her reaction was warranted. So I listened to all of your points, and I think they're all valid, and all of it makes sense. I looked at it as the Rhiannon is used to her and Violet being best friends, and Imogen and Violet are not friends in Rhiannon's eyes and have not ever been. They do go through a traumatic battle together, but now they're best friends, and, like, Rhiannon's being shut out and they're hanging all the time. That would be a very abrupt kind of
friends. They're like running together and sitting at the lunch table.
I'm being extra about it, but you know what I mean. Like,
yeah.
I understand her being like, what's going on? Like, are you mad? Yeah.
I definitely understand it being from a point of jealousy.
Yeah, I think so. But I can see that just being a natural feeling.
And more how Violet's treating her and she feels like she's hiding things, but not just like the concept of her being friends with Imogen. Like, to me, it makes perfect sense, regardless of what else is going on.
Yeah, it makes sense to me to be like, yeah, that wouldn't be weird. You're not gonna, I mean, it's hard to go through something like college with somebody for year after year after year when you're that close and hate them. Like, that's tough to do. You might not love everybody, but I bet you won't hate them. Anyway, Professor Devara has a new scar on her bicep, right? And I know that's just a big jump, but that's really the next thing that happens is we end up in Devara's classroom.
Yep.
She was with the Southern Wing last week, and, which we know Xaden is now in the Southern Wing also. And she stops there's a point made when she's looking around the classroom. She stops when she sees Violet and flashes a proud smile. And for whatever reason, the scar fighting with the Southern Wing, flashing a proud smile at Violet made me think Devera has been a part of the revolution. Like, she's already a part of the revolution.
Yeah, I didn't take the time to go and research. I don't think she is, because I feel like we have a direct conversation with Devera later. We know she's the one who ends up like planting the flyers or whatever it is in Battle Brief.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like there's a conversation where she's saying she has just come around to figuring things out, but I could be wrong.
Okay. All right. Yeah, and I don't remember either. You know, obviously, I made it well known. I'm reading this knowing the whole story, but forgotten most of the details. So then, kind of out of nowhere, Colonel Markham joins the class as like a professor this year, and Violet
was there last year too.
Was he? I didn't remember him being there last year.
Yeah,
was he?
Mm-hmm.
That's right, there was, because she saw him. That's the only reason we know even he was around, because he was in that classroom.
Yeah, they were together.
Yeah. Anyway, just kidding. I'm glad you're paying attention. So anyway. She says she wants to flick a dagger into his, what she says, traitorous back.
Huh?
And you get it. It says, you know, he wrote the history that writers are taught from.
Yeah.
You know, and.
Which, like, he does, and he did and he didn't. Obviously, like, he's not, like, that old. The history hasn't been written. I don't know how old Markham is, but.
He has
we'll
gray
give him
hair.
50, 60, 70 at best.
Right.
There's clearly books in the archives from well before his lifetime.
Yeah. But I guess she believes he's the one that's changing the information. And there is a point being made, or a point that is made, that said that information from the front lines comes to bad guys first and then to the king, which you're like, that's dangerous. You know, well, I get it, but it's dangerous.
And we don't necessarily know, like, we can make assumptions, I guess, that the king knows about what's going on because his son knows. Right. So you're assuming it's probably likely that he knows too. But
yeah, I
he's still
think
not
so.
Getting all the information, potentially. Right. Or most likely, he's not getting all the information.
And my thought was he knows, but he probably thinks, well, they exist. It's you know, he doesn't have up-to-date information like, hey, these things are attacking our border. Like, they're coming. Like, this is a real thing. I don't think he understands the credible threat that they pose.
Yeah.
So Markham also says that there's been 2 attacks on the borders in the last week, and that, I think it's like Siping or something. I don't know. I can't.
Sure.
You know, Siping was an unprovoked attack at around 2 a.m. and it's near the eastern border, but it's 8,000 feet into the Espen Mountains,
which is another high altitude attack. And I don't feel like we got any explanation for why we have these high altitude attacks from griffins, unless these aren't really griffin attacks. But I feel like we know later.
But we think this one is, right? This one is a griffin attack.
Yeah.
You know, right. But then it becomes in my mind now, knowing what's maybe after reading a couple other attacks, are they venom attacks that the flyers are then blamed for by trying to loot afterwards? You know what I mean? Like, it's hard to say. So anyway.
I mean, we know there are actual griffin attacks. We know that there was one at Montserrat.
Well, this is one. I think this is one.
This is also not an outpost. This is a civilian village. So that doesn't make sense either. For why would the Griffin Flyers be attacking a civilian village?
Yeah.
There's not going to be the daggers there.
Right. So I don't know. So the only information we get is that only one flyer and a griffin were found in a cave and they were burned on site.
So they didn't get any information out of them.
No information, right?
Which, convenient.
Right. Like the worst possible way to go about that. And then Athmine was attacked 3 days ago, and that 3 dragons and the infantry that were there stopped the attack because the other 9 were like out on patrols or whatever. And that a flyer was found near the armory.
Mm-hmm.
So my thought is that is a griffin attack. They thought that Athmine, and that's brought up like potentially they thought it was deserted because they're backed up on their timelines or the information that they're getting and they got bad info or whatever.
Yeah, that one makes sense to me. And Violet mentions that she thought originally that that attack could have been Venin, which would be extremely plausible because the Venin were just right there at Resin. But I guess Devera says that she was there, so she says, no, it must not have been Venin. It must have been Griffin Flyers.
Right.
Also, it would make sense for it to be Griffin Flyers because if they know that Resin, really close by, had just been attacked, of course they're going to supply extra daggers to this outpost.
Yep.
For that reason.
Yeah. So, and again, there's just... That's what makes it so interesting. You got to kind of guess at all of this stuff because she doesn't know either. So one thing she does know, though, is Markham gets ready to talk about Reston. And he tells the class that Reston was leveled by Poromish, thank you, unrest. But during that, Devera keeps like side-eyeing Markham, and he like several times, and there's comments made to him about like just the way he's speaking or interacting that seems off.
She's like, we don't typically like give them the answers.
Right, just little things like that. So it just made Markham clearly knows what really happened.
Yeah, and he's having to make sure he puts his narrative out there.
Right. So, yeah, anyway, after all of that, Rhiannon comes up after Violet and says that she thinks that the school is hiding something in the healer's quadrant. And we obviously know what's going on there, but she took a first year there, says that Nolan looks like shit, and that Varys was there. And we had talked about this earlier, but Varys was there and said that he had better shit to do than talk to her or whatever, and escorted him to a small door in the back that now is guarded. So again, we had talked about that a little earlier in the episode, but that's the first time you actually find out that, like, well, why is Varys down there with Nolan? Why is it guarded? Like,
and this is another thing that on a reread, kind of the pieces click together, because when I read that the first time, it just completely glossed over the fact that Varys was there and was like, oh, like maybe that's sketchy or whatever.
I noticed the guards the first time and I was like, well, there's something definitely going on, but Varys was not even like...
Yeah.
That wasn't in my mind.
But going back, and that gives you that direct connection where if you were on the fence about Varys, we never fully find out whether he's a Venin or not. But now we know that he is directly involved with the Jack Barlow being a Venin situation.
Yep. Definitely involved. So, and then after that, right, we end up getting I thought was a funny quote from Imogen. What's her freaking... Sloane says something about wanting to fight Violet. She calls Violet out on the map, basically. And obviously, Violet's not going to fight her because this is about to go sideways very quickly. But she's like, I know I can take her. Her joints, pop out easy, according to your letter or whatever. And Violet's kind of like, what the fuck at Imogen? And Imogen's response made me chuckle. She was just like, well,
I didn't like you.
The thing is, I don't like you last year.
I didn't like you last year. You're an acquired taste.
Yeah, you're an acquired taste. You're whatever. And it's kind of like, yeah, I mean, what'd you expect? She obviously didn't like you last year.
Yeah. So, this was the part where that made me think that it was possible that Imogen was the one who would have communicated the situation about Liam to Sloane because they're corresponding.
Right.
But again, I just don't feel like the way Imogen would have written it would made it seem like Violet was responsible for it, but I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a letter, so wording.
Right. So, but I thought that was funny. And then the point that, again, we had made earlier, this chapter just ends in the craziest sentence or paragraph or whatever. Basically, to sum it up, that tall ass dude that was crossing parapet that threw the little kid off of it, that's Jack Barlow Jr., walks up and was like, did somebody say Violet Sorrengail? And Nadine was like, yeah, look at my hair. Can't you see? I'm Violet. And he twisted her neck and broke her neck.
Yeah.
And left her head facing the wrong direction.
Very abruptly.
And you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
What and that's the end of chapter 9.
What a way.
Yeah. All right. You ready for chapter 10?
I'm ready.
All right. Let's get.
So Nadine's dead.
Good start. Okay.
That was abrupt, but now Violet has to face the attacker herself. He's much bigger than her, but Violet has come a long way and is a pretty formidable opponent. She manages to get some slices in with those daggers of hers that bring the attacker down, but he just won't give up. Must have something to do with those red-ringed eyes of his. The guy has her on the ground, choking the life out of her when she finds out exactly who sent him because he says, secrets die with the people who keep them. Now, where have we heard that before? Daddy Atos. That little sentence gives Violet the energy she needs to go on a little stabbing spree, which is enough to finish off her attacker. Violet continues to be a badass, though, by leaving that altercation and just going about her day like it was nothing. Luckily for her and us, Xaden is waiting for her in her room when she finishes her day. They have a good chat about how things are going, but unfortunately Xaden has rebellion business to get to, so he has to leave shortly after arriving. But to make the distance a little easier, Xaden Ryerson has written Violet a letter.
Wow. Good job. Good summary.
Thanks.
Good summary. Yeah, so first note that I have, like normal notes, is the notice from Pancheck at the top that's from several years ago that's going to General Sorrengail, letting her know that someone tried to assassinate Mira. which obviously we know that there's an assassin here now. He just tried to kill Violet and kill the wrong person. So
yeah, I'm curious who Mira's assassin was. Like, was it potentially somebody from the Resistance or the Rebellion? I feel like it kind of had to have been. Like,
probably
who else would General Sorrengail's enemies be that are within Navarre?
Well, Zayden's the first group to go through, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't necessarily. Well, did it say it was a fellow cadet?
I think so, yeah. It's not uncommon for a cadet to be paid to assassinate another or something like that.
Right. I don't know.
I think so. Yeah, interesting. Good question.
So Andarna wakes briefly when Violet panics after this whole, Nadine dying business.
Mm-hmm.
And this happened several more times, and I think it's definitely another reason why Feathertails clearly should not bond, because they're not able to go through their dreamless sleep dreamlessly, because they keep getting woken up whenever their bonded rider has any sort of strong emotions.
Right, yeah. I agree. I mean, obviously all those rules were there for a reason, and every time Tyrion's been like, this is why Feathertails don't do it, he's been right.
Yeah.
So in this...
But that seems like a pretty big one, because I would definitely think that this would impact things later on.
I think dreamless sleep is supposed to be like unwoken sleep.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, I would think so. So this fight scene with the attacker honestly was much shorter than I anticipated it being.
Yeah.
There's some longer fight scenes in the series, really.
Yeah, this one was just a couple pages.
This one wasn't a whole lot, right? So here's some notes that I had from it. His eyes are light brown, but rimmed in red as though he's on some kind of drug, right? So...
It's like, come on, Violet. Yeah, I guess you don't know everything about the venom yet, but...
you know that one. So, but, and again, I'd have to go back through it. I think you only have the red around your eyes when you've recently drawn power.
Which would make sense if he was going to attack her.
Right.
He would have drawn power.
But he probably didn't come with red rings around his eyes when he got to Parapet, right? So that's, again, you're not going to notice all these venom when they're getting there, because if they haven't channeled in however long, they might not have any factors that you would see. So anyway.
Which would imply that he has channeled since being there.
Right. He has channeled. He probably came in a venom, but has just channeled since being there, gotten some power.
Under the wards.
Right.
And how is that possible?
Yeah.
It also, she makes a comment too that he moves as if he's impervious to pain. Like, she slices the tendons at his knees and he just acts like no big deal. He can't stand up, but he still is fighting just as hard. And that, I think, I don't know like how venom are as far as pain, but it seems like we're getting little pieces that maybe they're not as affected by pain.
Right. And I think we kind of know that, but yeah, most people would go down pretty hard from that, and he just didn't slow down at all. He's like, yeah, I don't give a fuck. I'm going to keep kicking and striking you. So he gets her down to the ground, and then lo and behold, repeats the quote, secrets die with the people who keep them.
Mm-hmm.
Colonel Atos is clearly a venom.
Working with
hired a fucking venom. Yeah. But Violet, being the badass that she is, while she's being choked to death and her world's closing in around her, she stabs him to death, like in the range of his kidney. Just stabs him a bunch. Stabs him a whole bunch.
And I feel like, I have a couple of notes. I feel like this interaction or this altercation would have been the hardest one for Violet so far, at least in my opinion, because it was her first close combat death. Like, she's never killed somebody with a dagger up close like this. That was like a real person,
right?
Who was like on top of her. Like, that's intense. That's like your life is literally like flashing before your eyes. This person's on top of you, choking you. Then you stab
personal
the shit out of him.
Killing somebody in hand-to-hand combat is much different than killing somebody from a lightning distance. Strike.
Right. Yeah, and obviously that other venom she took out with a dagger, but that was a venom. Like, that's clearly like they're a monster. Right. Yeah, and this was like a person. I feel like she would have had a hard time compartmentalizing this. But then, of all people, after this goes down, it's Dane that's trying to check on her. And it, innocently enough, I'm sure Dane truly was worried about her. But, like, she just found out that Dane's dad was the one who sent this assassin. Yeah. Of all the people she's going to want anywhere near her, Dane, it's not. He's not the one.
This isn't helping him get back closer to her again, at any means.
Yeah, and again, it's innocent regardless. Like, he cares about her.
Right.
She almost died.
He's
just going to check on her.
Yeah, now your dad's sending assassins, dog.
Yeah.
Like, no chance.
But then she lets Emeterio touch her afterwards, which, do we know what his signet is?
I don't think that we do.
I don't think we do either.
Let me check my handy dandy
Notebook.
application here. Yeah, that is what I was thinking of. It's funny enough. Emiterio, let's see. No, got nothing for Emiterio. Not yet.
So that I'm surprised that she let him touch her.
Yep.
That easily.
Yeah, that is some blind trust that probably is frowned upon.
And obviously she must know his signet. She just hasn't shared it with us. I suppose.
Hopefully.
So then Violet just gets straight up and is like, no, I'm going to stay. I'm not leaving the way I left last year. Like, good on you, girl. Because again, I'd be out. But Sloane goes into her fight, and Sloane's a terrible fighter.
Yep.
And I feel like this would be more common. And Imogen makes a comment about it later that she says that some of the foster parents stop training them after Xaden got to Basgiath and started like rising in rank. And I would think that I'm surprised any of them would have started to, because it kind of gives the implication that, you know, most of the people that these rebellion kids are being fostered with are people who are loyal to Navarre. And I would kind of think that they would have treated these rebellion kids fairly poorly. And if nothing else, would have definitely not wanted to have been training them to be badass fighters.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't really think about it from that point of view of her, because, you know, there's the mention of she wasn't fostered by fighters or whatever, people who trained her. My thought was the people who adopted these children were people who were willing to adopt rebellion children and would have treated them well as you would
but
treat
I
an
can
adopted
see,
child.
You know, it going both ways. I could see
I
people
can too,
who with
yeah.
like, you know, really not great intentions being willing to adopt them, be like, oh, I'm going to torture these kids.
Yeah, no, I can see that too, because there's some evil people in this series. So, yeah, both check out. Good thought. I don't know.
But even if they're, my point was that even if they are like, oh, we're going to treat them well, you know, there's a difference between treating them well and training them in a way where they can potentially be a threat to you later.
Unless you were adopted by riders or people who know, you know what I mean? Somebody who knew what you were going to, they already knew where they were going. So the people who adopted them knew they were going into this quadrant.
Yeah.
So, you know, you could train them because you care about them, you know, not to rise back up against Navarre, but, you know, I don't know. Again, good thoughts. So many questions. But yeah, like you said, she kind of just is like, no, I'm good. I don't need to go to the infirmary. I'm fine. Leave me alone. She stumbles on back to her room, and as she's getting ready to open the door, she can feel who's inside, and it is Xaden. So, and he's like 2 days late or something. He's supposed to be like 2 days ago. She referenced that at some other point, but she says it's been 8 days since they've seen each other, which seems like a long time.
It does, and we obviously know this from personal experience, the whole only seeing each other on the weekend. So much of this whole like back and forth just reminded me so much of that when you were stationed a state away.
Yeah.
And we were only seeing each other on the weekends. Like every single time she mentioned like missing him or, you know, the traveling back and forth. I'm like,
yep.
Been there.
Yep. Sucks. Been there. Lots of hours spent traveling. Big bummer. And, you know, during Xaden and Violet's conversation, there's nothing truly groundbreaking that comes out of it, in my opinion. But some of the notes that I had was that he does open up to her a little bit when she's asking, like, you know, how's it going or whatever. And at first he doesn't, but she's kind of got to press the issue. Like, no, you're supposed to open up. And he says it's annoying, but he's having to prove himself all over again, which you know that's going to happen. That's already kind of been set, that him being Rebellion's kid, the relic, all that.
And he's
gonna
the
be
first.
Tougher. He's the first. It's going to be tough for him. But he said they're easier on Garrick, which he was appreciative of. And then there's this whole conversation about warding the door where she finds out, basically he's told her that he's warded the door, but she has to be touching the person to come through it. And besides him, he can come in whenever he wants.
And she seems surprised by that. But I mean, honestly, from a logistical standpoint, like it makes sense because, you know, regardless of her trying to bring another dude in, she's got friends.
Right.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean, like the ability for absolutely no other person to come in her bedroom is not really realistic. So I don't necessarily know that gives him but so many brownie points. But what does give him brownie points is when he tells her later that his room is only warded for her and him.
Right.
Like
yeah.
His doesn't allow for him to bring anybody else in.
Yeah.
That's brownie points.
Smooth.
Smooth.
Yep.
Then Zayden thinks that he says something about like, until you give me those 3 words, or all it's going to take is you giving me those 3 words. And she's determined that the 3 words are, I want you. Like, who has ever heard anybody say, I want 3 words from you, and thought they're, I want you?
Yeah, it's obviously I love you, right? Like, I saw it too, and I was just like, that's
dumb.
That's stupid.
Clearly not what she wants to say. But
he's a little dumb. It's okay.
Again, he's still saying here, he doesn't play games. He plays all the games. Zayden's playing games here. Like,
he can read your attention. Everything he's doing is a game.
Yeah, but it's just so frustrating because it's like, oh, I don't play games. This isn't a game. But like, if you want me, you got to give me those 3 little words. Yeah. Like,
and I'll answer questions that you ask. You better ask the right ones.
Yeah, like, quit playing, Zayden.
Yep. So, and I mentioned this before. Violet's become a little desensitized to death, right? And she says that she didn't really watch the first years, crossing the parapet, right? Tried not to. And Zayden makes a comment about the first years where some of us lose our lives, the second years where the rest of us lose our humanity. And it's kind of true. Like, if you don't die in year 1, it's great. Now you're year 2 and you're watching threshing, you're watching parapet. Like, you were watching these first years. Mm-hmm. Like, as a second year, you can still die. As a third year, you can still die. But way more first years. You're just watching innocent people
and die. People younger than you, you know, like where you're like, I've been there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I thought that was an interesting quote, which made sense. And then obviously, like you talked about in the summary, Zayden writes her a letter since they don't have any time together. This is his romantic gesture, spending time together, walk down by the river or whatever he called it.
Which I wish we got more out of these letters, and I'm surprised that we don't get more of them. Like, it seems like, and I could be wrong, that the only time she gets letters from him is when he physically delivers them, which I'm sure there's a reason for that.
Well, he tells her, hey, remember, they check our stuff.
But I do think that writing the letter was the perfect way for him to communicate with Violet specifically. Because, like, you know, she was a scribe, and she's going to get to read about him, and that's how she's going to learn about him, and she's going to be able to keep these letters and, you know, refer back to him. Like, for her scribe mind, I feel like this was an ideal way for him to communicate with her. But it again goes to show how new their relationship is. Like, she's learning basic details about him and his life, right? That, again, if you had been with someone for a long time, you would know. But I think that kind of goes to like what we were saying last week is, it's a new relationship. Y'all don't really know each other.
It's puppy love in a way.
You definitely don't know him better than yourself.
No. I agree with that. And you don't know his body like the back of your hand yet.
No.
So
not yet.
Nope. That's it.
Yeah.
I'm done. So next is questions and theories, which I'll be honest with you. I only had one question and I erased it because it was to do with Nadine, like what really happened to her hand. And then all of a sudden I was like, fuck, that's right. Her neck gets broken. I don't give a shit about that question anymore. So it's gone. Like, who gives a fuck about Nadine's hand?
Yeah, I had seen it. I think that it was just the question about Nadine's hand. The point that I had about it was, I think that the whole her wrist being hurt was just for a way to Rebecca to find to mention the Nolan situation and what was going on with him.
Yeah, at the time I had wrote that, I had read that part of a chapter and had not finished all of my reading. Mm-hmm. And again, I've forgotten so many things. So when Nadine's neck gets snapped, I'm like, well, that is a fucking irrelevant question.
Yeah.
So that was it.
Well, I don't really have a question or anything this week for this section either. The only thing that I did want to note is I want to keep an eye on where these assassins that we encounter are coming from and like all of these situations. Because this guy, they said, was in second wing, and he obviously had some like venom business going on. Jack Barlow is first wing. But I think that later on in this book, we get some other like second wing, first wing references to some of these people. So that's something I'm going to be paying attention to.
I like it. That's smart. All right. Well, next is Zayden's Intrinsic Watch, where we look for any areas where it's obvious that he's using a signet power or any instances we think it's possible or likely he's using it. I think we each have one.
Yeah, I'm going to let you do yours first because yours comes first.
Okay. Mine is just a quotation mark catch is really what it is. And
that I did not catch.
Heck yeah.
Good catch.
Thank you. I know. It's on page 49. And she says to herself, it's not quotations, how are Zayden and I going to fix whatever we are without time together? And Zayden says, pretty sure that's precisely the idea. And he continues to go on. And the rest of the conversation is in quotes before and after. So again, I don't believe that's a mistake. I believe that is there intentionally. So
I think it is. I think it's another one of those examples, though, where we're like, we just don't understand Xaden's intrinsic power. And I don't know if that's because, like, it hasn't been properly fleshed out at this point in the series. But that certainly doesn't seem like an example of what I would consider to be an intention so much as a thought.
So maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's not an intention. Maybe it's just a mental. She's thinking and forgetting, and he's just breaking through her shield.
It's
so maybe
confusing.
it's not an intrinsic because it's not really reading an intention as much as she's letting her shields fall, and he's reading her mind, or he's in her mental connection. Maybe you're right. Okay, what you got?
We need more info.
We do.
So page 93, when Violet was with Xaden in her room, there's a knock at the door, and she says that she startles, but she can't help but notice that Xaden doesn't. And then you could make the argument that he knew Bodhi was coming, but when he goes to the door, he says already, like he wasn't expecting, like he was expecting Bodhi to come, but he was not expecting Bodhi to come at that exact moment.
Right. Yeah.
But of course, Bodhi's got the intention, I'm about to knock on this door, and Xaden heard that from outside the door.
Yeah.
So that's why he wouldn't have startled in that moment. Little thing.
That's a very deep pull. You got it. Yep. I'm in.
So here's our new segment, and it is the second signet watch, specifically Violet's second signet watch. We know that Violet is going to be getting a second signet because she has 2 dragons. Rebecca Yarros has confirmed this. She has also said that there is evidence of the use of that second signet in Iron Flame. And we can make the assumption that it's going to happen after Andarna wakes up. I don't think that it has to be. I think that it's possible that, Andarna's already channeling power to her in some fashion. So, I think there's a possibility that we could get evidence of it prior to her waking up. But we're going to spend our time in this section keeping an eye on it, watching out for it, and specifically following specific theories and looking for specific ones. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But you were going to talk about what a signet, what constitutes a signet, why someone would have a certain signet.
Yeah.
What you got?
So, a few quotes from the book. This is not in this week's reading. This is just, some of this is at the end of Iron Flame. So, it kind of comes from everywhere. But these are different times in which a comment about the second signet's made, right? And Andarna at one point says, "Why are you asking me?" in reference to second signets. Signets manifest according to the person wielding, right? Okay. So we know that.
So they're about the person.
All right. And the only other thing that I had is that Violet at one point says signets have to do with who we are at our core and what we need. So she's got 2 dragons. She should have 2 signets. And the only information that we have is that they manifest according to the person wielding, and they have to do with who we are at our core and what we need.
And that's when she kind of goes on that spiral, and she's trying to figure out what Xaden's was. And she was like, what exactly does Xaden need? And so I feel like that makes us have to really think about, what does Violet need? And we know that after she originally manifested her first signet, she goes on and on about not wanting her signet to be a weapon and it be something that she can use to help people. I feel like we also know that she really seems to have a need for information, right?
Yep.
What else do you feel like Violet really needs?
I think that she is, I mean, this is my whole theory. I've said this before, but I think she has this whole good and evil, thing going on. And I think her first signet is to destroy and to kill, and again, it can be used to protect, but it's going to be used to destroy and to kill. So her second signet's going to be used to help or protect or heal or whatever. She also has this condition with her joints and her body and pain, and so I think it's going to be more of a mending or healing second signet. What she needs, her most vulnerable thing is that her body itself is weaker than what she would consider like a normal person's body to be. So I think her thing is, her second signet is something with healing or mending, which is, I don't know how or why that would work, but that's in my head what I think.
So that's what you're going to be looking out for as you read, is what
healing, mending stuff.
Anything like that she does. Okay.
Yep.
Well, we reached out to you guys and we did get some responses for some of the theories that you guys have. And to kind of compile them all together, some of the top 3 ones that we got were something to do with her running and or her speed. Her being a truth-sayer, which I've seen this several times before, which is the ability to detect truth. And I think that's similar to what one of Varish's people was able to do during the interrogation portion.
Yep.
And potentially her being an intrinsic of some sort.
Which are all plausible, and I've seen all and can agree with all 3.
Yeah. And I feel like as far as this stretch of chapters go, I do feel like we got a little bit there with the running theory or her speed theory. Because she's practicing her running in chapter 9. And it's, the whole reasoning behind that is she says at this point, she does not feel like she is a fast runner. She wouldn't be able to outrun the venom. And I'm not sure if this necessarily gives credit to or discredits the running theory. Because, she's saying she's not fast enough yet. Andarna's still asleep. After Andarna wakes up later in the series, we do get a couple of instances where she describes running as though, faster than she possibly ever thought she could, barely touching the ground. So there's definitely a considerable difference in her speed between now and later after Andarna's awake. So maybe.
Yeah, and I feel like there's multiple mentions of her speed and the way that she is faster than the average person is, or faster than normal, or
and
things
fighting.
like that. And fight, yeah. So
I thought that speed was something that was manipulated with lesser magic. I thought that I had seen a mention of that at some point, like as far as speed being a lesser magic, but I could be entirely wrong.
Okay.
My theory that I am going to be researching as we go through, and again, we're looking for evidence of all of these, not just any particular one, but is her being able to see and or sense the future in some way. And we actually got something from this set of chapters that actually lent itself to that theory. I feel like, for one, that seems to be in a really roundabout way related to time manipulation. She's able to stop time, able to see into the future. They're loosely related.
Sure.
But we get potentially a glimpse of it with the interaction with Solus, because she knew what Solus was about to do. And she kind of makes a point of mentioning that it was because of the angle. They're like, they were getting so much farther away where he was. The angle of it would have naturally meant that it was going to take out more people. But it does seem like there's other instances, later on, has been in the past, where she seems to kind of know what's about to happen, or she puts pieces together very quickly.
I remember at some point reading the first time through telling you I thought there was a possibility that her second signet could be the same signet as Zayden's, where she can read intentions. And that would kind of go
along with it.
Somewhat along. Not to take over your theory. That's just one thought of kind of goes along with that as well.
Yeah, and it kind of does. And again, there's a lot of people that said they thought she's an intrinsic. So
yeah, I don't know. We're paying attention for it.
We are. We're looking for all of them. Looking for all of them. My saying here prior to Onyx Storm is that I think it's going to be able to sense the future. I do also, and I did not continue to research this, I do feel like I came across something at one point that said that Rebecca had made a comment that her second signet was not going to be some super rare, unusual one, which kind of surprises me, because that's my only thing about, ones like the speed one or ones like the truthsayer. Not to discredit those, because based on what potentially Rebecca said, those are very plausible. I just feel like I expect Violet's signet to be this big thing that no one else has, especially coming from Andarna.
If I came off of what my first thought of her second signet is, which I think I've told you before, where I think there's a possibility she can't be killed, and not in ever or whatever. And I don't know if that's because she's part venom, which is another theory. I mean, it's the truth. But she is just indestructible, dude. She goes through so much and just always seems to come back. And I'm I don't know, because I also think that that's not her second signet. I think that's because she's got venom in her. So that's why I keep an eye out for that, but that's not signet related as much as I think that's bloodline or whatever.
I think we should add it to the list.
Okay. I love it.
To follow.
Okay. All right, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
So what'd you have to Google this week?
I had to Google 3 words. That was it. I felt good about it.
Not bad.
So the first word was on page 41, and I still don't know exactly how to say it, but raucous.
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 Yeah, to be honest, I don't know that I've ever said that word out loud.
Raucous?
I would think raucous.
Okay. Let me see. You know what? Let me turn the volume up. Let's see. Okay. Does this thing work?
Raucous.
Shout out Google. Raucous. Third sentence of the chapter. All right. Page 41. The gathering hall is more raucous than I've ever seen it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, I was thinking ruckus, like it's just a lot going on.
Similar.
Yep. So making or constituting a disturbingly harsh or loud noise. Mm-hmm. So basically it means loud.
It was loud up in there.
Which is loud, which again, I kind of figured somewhere along that lines, but I was like, I don't know what the fuck that word is. Another one where after I read the definition, I was like, maybe I've seen this at some point, but maybe not. All right. And that was on page 59. And that was, I believe the way to say this is crenellations.
Mm-hmm.
And it's when Violet's talking about watching Conscription Day, and she says, I lean over the crenellations of the tower in the main war college.
That was a good one.
Yep. And that is the battlements of a castle or other buildings, which is like the little hole or whatever that you would see in a wall, like where people shoot arrows to and shit.
I mean, I had to look up parapet for the first time I read Fourth Wing,
So I only knew what parapet was because at work we talk about, and I have to have a knowledge of parapet walls. So I actually know and knew what parapet meant for that.
Interesting.
Except our parapets are, it doesn't matter. Anyway, third word was on page 69, and that is derision.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it's when Taryn says, I do not participate in parlor tricks.
Mm-hmm.
And he responds, his derision making me smile. And I figured that was tone, but it kind of is. It says contemptuous ridicule or mockery. So it says it kind of like mockingly, I guess.
Yeah.
So I, kind of knew, I think after I read them, like that's about what I thought. But 3 words where I was like, I don't actually know what the fuck that word means.
Hey.
So I'm going to Google it.
It's always good to know for sure.
Yep. So that's my 3.
Helps you understand it better.
I think so.
All right. Well, I think that wraps us up for today. So don't forget, new episodes every Monday. Next week, we are going to be continuing Iron Flame in chapters 11 through 15.
Yep. In the meantime, follow us on social media. You can find us on Instagram at TillBooksPod, which is TILBOOKSPOD, or on TikTok at till.books.pod, or you can email us or DM us at tillbookspod@gmail.com. Again, it's TILBOOKSPOD.
Mm-hmm. We'd love to continue hearing your second signet theories so that we can be looking out for them and reading carefully for it.
Yep.
Any other theories that you have, we'd love to hear it.
Oh, send us everything. If you send it, I will read it.
He does.
I do. I love it.
We read all the things.
Yep. So, all right. We'll see you next Monday then.
See you next week, guys.